Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Guidance Kandemiri, and I'm so glad you are here with us today. Today, I'm having a conversation with you about loving. I want to talk to you about the love of Christ and how we can actually learn to show the love of Christ to people that are around us. And some of us are struggling. We don't know how to express love. I've learned that love is an easy word to play around with, but there is a definition to how we love people, and there's a way that we can learn how to do so. And the expression is often difficult for us to translate what love looks like on paper, because saying I love people like Christ loved people is easy, but how do we actually translate that and how do we live that out? So I'm going to teach you today about mindful loving, and I'm going to teach you about how to live that life that demonstrates the love of God to other people. Now we're going to read two scriptures that we have, Matthew chapter 22, verse 36, and we're going to read John chapter 13. If you are with me, just run over there and get both of those scriptures and put them together. Matthew 22, verse 36. It says, "Teacher, which is the greatest commandment in the law?" These are the disciples asking. And Christ responds by saying, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. And the second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All law and the prophets hang on these two commandments." This is Christ speaking. Now, let's talk about this for a minute. There's a first element that I want to remind you of, something very critical to this conversation. In the Old Testament, love was commanded by God. God has commanded love. It's usually a very strange thing, because most of the time when we are loving people, we love because love is a decision. This is a very different from our Western or Eurocentric approach of love, which says that love is a feeling, love is an emotion, love is something that I feel towards a person. And we often love people because there's a certain type of way they make us feel. So we love people because there are similarities within us. We love people because there's something within us that attracts us to them. Love is, I'm currently in the process of writing a book. I've been writing this book for about 10 years. It's called The 16 Dimensions of Love. And in this book, I talk about the different levels of love. Attraction is one of the lesser forms of love. And we call it attraction because basically when we think about it, we often love things because we are attracted to them. In fact, one of the most phenomenal changes that happened in the philanthropy space is they realized that every single time they put pictures of children that are starving and hungry and so forth, and they put pictures of these kids there and they say donate and give and help these children in Africa, they are starving, they are hungry, people give, but not as much. But what they learned is that if we can change that and we rather make it attractive, people would actually give more, because attraction is a form of love. So what they did was they now make it look nice. They show you healthy kids and they are playing and they are laughing and they are happy. And then they say to you, give. Through your giving, this is what we've managed to do. And by changing that narrative alone, they trigger instincts in people that are loving. They make people want to give because people want to be associated with the success. Nobody wants to be associated with sadness and poverty and suffering and hunger and flies zipping all over the child's face. People want to be part of successful projects, and because success is attractive. And so one of the things that we do is we love things that are attractive to us. And so Christ then is talking to an audience that don't come from that teaching. He's talking to people that come from where love is commanded. In the Old Testament, love was commanded. Why is love commanded? Because we can do it out of obligation. Because when it is commanded of us, we do what we are supposed to do out of the obligation that love gives us. But there's a problem with this kind of love. This kind of love is limited to our capacity. I can love my wife because I am obligated to do so, because she's my wife. I married her. I mean, I put the ring on it. I'm the one who said I do, etc., etc. And if people see me in the street, they're not going to be happy with a man that mistreats his wife. And so I will obey loving her every single day as a commandment. And that's why it is, because it's given, I'm supposed to show up, I'm supposed to demonstrate love, I'm supposed to act loving towards my wife because I choose to do so. It is a choice to do so. So the problem with this kind of love is it is bound by the limitation of choice and the capacity of the lover, the person giving the love. All right, I think that's a better way to put it. Lover is the wrong term there. All right, so I can love a person, but to my capacity. I can only love this person to the best of my ability. And so everything I do is bound by the rules and the limitations of guidance. Guidance is a loving person, but in the loving that he's doing, his definitions, his vocabulary, his capacity are the ceiling. I will never love past what I know about love. And so what happens is, even my history, my knowledge, my experience, what I've seen my mom and dad do, my generational exposure, my trauma, all of those things are put into consideration in how I demonstrate love to another person. So the first thing I have to do is I have to love God, but I can only love God based on my personal capacity. I can only love God based on what I know about other people. I can only love God based on the textbook definition of what it means to love God. Give him a sacrifice every couple of days. Go to church because you have to kind of go to church. If you don't go to church, what kind of a person are you? Serve him. Do one or two things for him. Give him your tithe and your offerings and so forth. And so my definition of loving God, according to the law, is to my capacity. I can never love beyond what I have. Remember, you can only give what's in your cup. So this is the problem with this love. But then Christ does something interesting. In the Old Testament, my love, the limit of my love is myself. I can only love to the limit of me. But then in John chapter 13, which I promised to read with you, I'm going to read right now in the NIV, John 13 verse 34, it says, Christ then comes to his disciples and he says, a new commandment I give you, love one another as I have loved you. So you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. He then moves the goalpost a little bit there now. I used to have to love people according to my capacity. I could only love you the way guidance can love you, the way a man can love you. I can love you beyond this. Now, suddenly, you want me to love people the way Christ loved them? Now he shifted the dimension altogether. So where I used to love people to the best of my ability, I now need to learn to love people to the best of Christ's ability. That's a mess. Now, in the Old Testament, I have to love people to the capacity of guidance. My greatest capacity is myself. But in the New Testament, my new capacity is Christ. So I have to measure how Christ loved people. And I have to love people the way he loved them. And so by faith now, here's the dimension, here's the conversation. When I'm becoming like Christ, it's not just my abilities or my thinking or my behavior or my character that changes. It is also in the expression of my love. I used to love God only the way I could love as a person, but I can now love God the way Christ loves him. I used to obey God the way guidance could obey God, with the limitations of what I can do. But now I can be obedient to him completely in the sense of this is who he is. This is how Christ loves God. And I'm choosing now to obey, to love, to do this all the way Christ does it. And so Christ demonstrates. He says that when you demonstrate this kind of love, you are my disciples. True discipleship is being able to do it at his capacity, at his level. It's being able to love people the way Christ would have loved them. And now the question then becomes, how are we mindful in terms of how we love people? You see, the world is scary. It's a very, very scary world, because I was having a conversation with some people, and I'm often still bothered by people who are racist but religious. It doesn't make any sense. There are so many people who just genuinely hate white people. I can't stand white people. I never want to see a white person, and yet still claim to be saved. I started with that example because often it's the other way around. A lot of people believe, no, white people are racist, black people are not. Unfortunately, it's both sides of the coin. Some people are genuinely white and they hate black people. Some people are Chinese, they're Asian, they're Japanese, they're Korean, and they can't stand another race that they've never met. Some people are Indian, and it's the same thing. And these people are packed in churches. The church is full. We are going to be having a conversation about this again soon, but the church is full of people who continue to demonstrate racism, and yet we claim to be Christ's, filled with Christ. We claim to be born again. We claim to be Christian, and yet we continuously demonstrate a culture or the mindset of being racist. It's phenomenal. It blows my mind. It blows my mind. Now, here's the thing. there are certain things that we have to then do. And I'm going to give you a little blueprint, a little small blueprint of how to become mindful about love, because I believe that mindfulness is important. Mindfulness is being conscious of something and doing so every single day until it is part of your nature, until it is something you are used to doing. Now, your nature has changed. If you are in Christ, you are a new person. All things have passed away, behold, all things have become new. But mindfulness, which is the process of sanctification, it is being able to do over and over again. It's being able to create a practice around something so that it is part of your nature. Number one, we have to demonstrate love. Love has to be demonstrated physically. We have to give people kind words. We have to give gifts. We have to be mindful about being selfless, our selfless actions. We have to learn to pray for people. I've learned something, and I think I shared this on our conversation about how I actually learned to forgive people and what I struggled with in forgiving. But God made me pray for people I could not forgive. People I just could not forgive, and I couldn't, I hated them. I loathed them. I couldn't stand them. I wished the worst upon them. And God healed me by helping me, by teaching me to pray for those people. Let me tell you something. You will never, and I mean, in a culture that says, okay, I'll pray for you. Whenever people come to us in problems and they say, I have a problem, I say, I'll pray for you. I'll pray for you, sis. Just go through instead of helping. But genuinely praying for a person demonstrates love. I don't know a lot of people that pray for me except people that genuinely love me. And so we say it as a gesture, as a joke, as a dismissive statement. But the truth of the matter is the actual action of getting down on your knees and saying, God, remember this person, is an incredible act of love. It is a phenomenal act of love that should never be taken for granted. So pray for people. Pray for people you don't like. Make it a point. And whether this is politicians, whether it is whatever, even the Bible reminds us that even the people that are in charge of in the country, I know you hate them, pray for them. Try it as an exercise. And so even some of the people in our lives that we don't get along with, your boss, the one that gives you a tough time, makes your life living hell at work, make it a habit and a continual thing of praying for them and meet their needs. Lastly, meet their needs. So be kind, be helpful, go around, support these people, be kind even with your words towards these people. Give yourself, give your time, give gifts, give to the same people that you are struggling to love. Anybody that you're struggling to love, do something selfless for them, pray for them, meet their needs, support them. That's the kind of standard that I want to do. So I want you to become mindful about doing love. Be mindful about doing love, number one. Number two, there's a very big difference between acceptance and approval. I'm going to give you a very simple way for something. It's possible for us to disapprove of something and yet still accept the people. You see, what God does is this. His kind of love makes it such that even though he doesn't like your sin, he doesn't throw away the baby with the diaper. All right. So if there's a stinky diaper there, it's possible for us to throw away the diaper and keep and protect the baby. And no matter what kind of sin you commit that is different from mine, no matter what kind of sin you commit that I don't approve of, it is still not up to me to reject you as a person. We have to then create a standard in the church in which we accept people but still do not approve of their sin. In our current climate with a lot of LGBTQI issues and a lot of homosexuality in the church and a lot of other issues going on, it's possible for us to say, hey, listen, we don't approve of this kind of life, but we accept you as a person. The reason why that's important is this: at no point in your life are you ever outside of the arm or the reach of grace. At no point in your life are you ever going to be far from the reach of grace. No matter what crime or what horrible thing you have done, no matter what horrible genocide you've committed, grace is still available to you. For that reason, and that reason only, it is our responsibility as believers to continuously extend grace. And grace is seen first by acceptance. Grace is seen first by acceptance. However, we never approve of sin. It is never our responsibility to do that. It's never our place to become approving to sin. There will never be a day I will open this platform and make excuses for any kind of sin, whether it's a man beating his wife, whether it is an abusive partner, whether it is rape, whether it is homosexuality, we call it all sin. This is the nature of it all. This is biblical. There's no hate. There's no. We're not saying people must be sacrificed for who they are and how they live. That's essentially what we are saying. We are simply saying there's certain things we do not approve, but we accept people. We accept even the different ones, even the quirky ones, even the sinful ones. We accept them because that's our responsibility. Love is first demonstrated through acceptance. As long as the grace of God can reach you, listen, I will make room to accept you. This is what it is. Number 3, spend time with different people. Can we make it a habit to just spend time with different people? I was watching this conversation not a conversation, apologies. I was watching a video on YouTube about that revival. My wife says it the name properly. There's this revival that has been Atterbury, I don't know what it is. There's a revival that has been going on that people have been talking about in America for a while. And the first thing I noted when I opened that video is there wasn't a single black person in there. I've seen a couple of videos. I haven't necessarily pursued it, but I didn't see a single black person there. It's phenomenal because when you talk about and you reference old revivals and historical incidences that happened like that, they combined different people. In the book of Acts, chapter 1, when the Spirit of God came, scripture says there they were gathered people from all over the continent. People claim that missionaries brought the gospel to Africa. That's not true. I want you to know this. Even if you read in the book of Acts with the Ethiopian eunuch and Stephen, he went back into Ethiopia with the gospel. And so their gospel, yes, was old. They didn't know about Christ. But this man, a governor, a eunuch in the court of the queen, actually came through and he was informed about the gospel and the gospel was preached to him. And then he was baptized and still got back on his chariot and went home and preached the gospel. The gospel has been global because the move of God, the very first move of God in the New Testament, the move of the Spirit of God in the book of Acts, everybody was present. Chinese were there. Can you imagine? The Indians were there. The blacks were there. The whites were there. Everybody was there. Every denomination and every color, every language, every tongue under heaven was present in the move of God. It's not possible for us to have a genuine move of God in isolation. What happens is that when God is moving in a place, what he does is he connects us with people that are just different from us. And now I'm talking about race specifically, but there's a broadness to this thing. Some of us think that we are only Christians because I want to spend time with wealthy people. I only want to spend time with people of a certain financial denomination. And for that reason, I don't relate with poor people. Oh, and that's why then Paul says they're now no longer a Gentile. There's now no longer a Jew. There's now no longer rich or old. Now we have to kind of find a way to meet and mingle with different people. It's not possible for you to love people that you consider different for yourself, that you distance yourself from them. And so we have to then create love, the kind of love that allows us to blend with people we would never have been seen with. I mean, there are certain characters or certain lifestyles that I just not familiar with. I'm not good with them. I'm not great with bikers. I think it's amazing to put on leather and spend the day on a nice Harley on a freeway somewhere. I think that sounds like a great life, but at the end of the day, I've never done it. It's not my kind of crowd. And so if you can get me a bandana, get me some leather, let's get on a bike somewhere and we can actually spend time with people that are completely different from us. People that we usually give names to them. We usually call them something that they're not. The reason why that's important is because we have to get to a point, ladies and gentlemen, where our consciousness or our awareness begins to give us the revelation that God wants us to connect with people that are different from us. He does want us to connect to people that are different from us. And God can work, especially in environments where our differences disappear and what begins to be seen is the Christ in us. Number 4, become more conscious of the grace of God for you. Become more conscious of the grace of God for you. Some people have become blind to the grace of God. You see, I love God because there are certain things that I did in my life that God saved me from, that I should never have escaped, that make it impossible for me to judge other people. I always say to people, I had a terrible past with relationships. So much philandering, so much women, and the terrible history of women in my life. If God had given me what I deserve, I would have died of either an STD or an AIDS or something like that. I would have been stabbed by somebody whose girlfriend or whatever I was messing with. And God saved me from that. The reason why I honor God without coming out of such a history and coming out to say, I'm here, I'm alive, I am disease free, I am healthy, I am in this amazing marriage that God has put me in, means that I got grace. We all get grace. And there are certain things that should have killed us, certain things that should have taken us, that we don't have the right. And hear me, I don't have the right to sit there and tell someone else that you are such a sinful person. How dare you sleep around? What kind of a person does this? Stop what you're doing. Yes, it's important for us to pull people out of the path of sin. Yes, it's important to remind people of sin. And in my line of work and because of ministry, there are many times I have rebuked people because they needed rebuke. And I'm not saying that there's no room for that. I'm saying that there's an awareness of grace. I understand when someone is struggling with sin. I understand when someone is struggling with that life. Yes, God saved me from that. And I was in the church when this stuff was happening. I was saved when this stuff was happening. But God pulled me out of this and He showed me a better path. And here I am, years later, and my life is different. This grace that God has given me has brought me to a different conclusion. That grace is evident and is present, and I'm grateful for that. But you know what? What I need to become more and more of, and all of us need to do this, is we need to become more conscious of the grace of God to us. I cannot love if I cannot see how bad I was or how bad I am and how grace has preserved me to this level. Right? And many of us struggle with a holier than thou attitude. And I wanna talk about this for a moment. A lot of us are holier than thou. We are better than the next person. We consider ourselves better or holier or more better present, as if we are holy in everything that we do. And so you find that even Christ then did not like the Pharisees of his time. Now, don't take my word out of context, because some people will take this and then run around with it and say, Christians, you are being judgmental. If you are living in sin, stop living in sin. Get your life in order, right? Realign with Christ. This is simple. We don't need to talk about this. This doesn't have to be a thing. It just has to be focused conversation. Get your life in alignment with the kingdom of God. That goes without saying. And so there is never, is particularly because I'm a prophetic voice, I don't make apologies for living a holy life. There is no substitute for that. There is no excuse for it. And so if you're a Christian living a sinful life, come on, get your life together. Align to Christ. Don't mess around. All right? So that goes without saying. But it's important that we extend grace. It's important that we extend grace. It's very important that as those that have been delivered from certain things, we extend grace. There are certain people that are still maturing. Often my wife has to remind me of this. There are certain people that are still maturing. And some people that are still working through the process. It's our responsibility to just become graceful in terms of helping them transition and work this out. So I'm not saying be soft. I'm not saying be unnecessarily nice. I'm saying be firm, be true, but extend grace. That's what I'm saying. And number 5, another thing that we have to deal with in the case of learning to love people the way Christ loved them, or being mindful concerning the culture of love, is really how to deal with the cultures that we build around ourselves. And a lot of us are not aware of the cultures that we created in our homes, in our environments, in our churches, in our workplaces. Most of us are not aware of the cultures that we created that make them hateful environments, that make it hard for us to love other people. If you pay attention to where you are right now and you start listening, all right, if you can, I'm going to pause this video. If you can, actually just pause this video for a second and pay attention to something, right? Pay attention to something when I tell you. Pay attention to breathing. Your breathing. Pay attention to heat. Are you feeling warm? Are you cold? I'm in a studio. This place is cold. I can feel my hands are freezing, right? I'm aware of my body. I'm aware of my feet. My feet are feeling this cold. There's a lot of stuff going on. You understand? There's lights. I can see this. Sensations. What sensations are you feeling? Are you warm? Are you wearing a jacket? What sensation does that give you on your skin, on your face, in your hair, etc., etc.? What colors are you seeing? All right. What colors are you seeing? What feelings are you currently feeling? How does this message make you feel, right? How does this message make you feel, etc, etc. Faces, people, who's around you. When you look at my face, what do you see, etc, etc, and all of that stuff. You are now becoming mindful of where you are in certain environments. They call it situational awareness. When you get into a certain place, scan, take a look around, especially in people who are in self-defense and all that stuff. But I want you to see something. If you pay attention to this from a mindfulness, you cannot be mindful if you are mindless. If you really get into your spiritual or social or family environment, pay attention to the things that you've become mindless about in terms of how you love people. Some of us are we are oblivious to mistreatment that we give to other people. We are oblivious to how Black people are treated in our workplaces. We are oblivious to how we speak about certain people in our environment. It's easy to just say, those poor people are a problem. It's easy to make statements like that. We can say such statements in the car with our kids, paying attention. My wife and I have become more aware of our language, of our behavior because of our children. And so when you are speaking about something, it's easy to say, man, black people are difficult, right? And this is not even you being a white person. This is you being another Black person saying, it's hard to work with Black people. And you say this statement recklessly in front of people. It makes us very dangerous. Our culture of mindlessness makes it dangerous for us to love people right. And sometimes loving people is not about them completely being different from us. Sometimes we just don't like people because they are other people. There are certain people we just don't like. You just don't like your mother-in-law. You just don't like your sister. You just have issues with your sibling. You just have issues with your co-worker. And all of that means you become mindless about what you say about them. You just start saying, that person, it's a terrible person. I don't want to talk to her. I'm not even in the mood for them. I'm not even going to go there and talk to them. And so what you're doing is you have a mindless culture that is unloving. And so what are the 5 things that you need to do? Number 1, you need to become mindful about love. Perform, do love, be loving. There's no difficult way to say that. Just be loving, be more loving in how you are kind, in how you are selfless, in how you pray for people. Accept people. I'm not saying approve of them, but accept them. Number 3, spend time with different people. Number 4, become conscious of the grace of God, the grace that God has extended to you. You are not perfect. Nobody is. And for that reason, it's important to extend that grace to others. Number 5, create a culture that is mindful. Pause for a moment and just pay attention to, what do people say in my house? What do people say in my church? What are the things that we do that we're not mindful of? When we were pastoring our church, we realized a very, very terrible culture that started. Right after the service, the wealthier people would huddle. They would come together and start talking with each other. The super educated people would huddle and start talking. So basically they would gravitate towards each other, which is natural, it's human. But what happened was it created culture where people with jobs that are considered lower level or less earners would then come together, because guess what? They are accepted with their own people. And certain people who feel more, eloquent, would come together and then be with each other. It was a very, very mindless culture that we created. Someone says, hey, what do you do? I'm an engineer. Oh, I'm a doctor. So we have something to talk about. And then they would huddle and start having conversations. And if you ask someone, hey, what do you do? And they say, I'm a maid. Then they're like, okay, I don't think we have a lot in common. I love you with the love of Christ, but, just hang over there and I'm going to hang with my people. And these cultures that we are mindless about, even in our lives, have a detrimental effect on how we love people. I want to remind you today to channel what we call divine cultures. Begin to build divine cultures of loving people, and let's learn to love people the way Christ loved them. Jesus loves people. He died for them. He sacrificed everything for them, and everything is about people. We can never say we love God if we don't love people. So I challenge you to raise your measure from loving them the way you can at your level to loving them the way He can at His level, and loving people the way Christ would love them. Bless you.